you know.
Let them handle that, the lightweight.
Exactly. We're going to talk about something that
We're
uh,
talking about heavyweights.
heavyweights. Yes, lifting the heavyweights. That's it. That's my
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Ricky here is a bit of a genius when it comes to exercise. So we're going to talk about some exercise techniques today. I'm going to talk about. I want to know a couple of things, man, because I've started my fitness journey with, and then Ricky's really helped me out. We used to have long conversations about all sorts of things, mostly
yeah.
exercises, but a lot about nutrition. And when I started off, I would, if you looked at me in the street, you wouldn't call me fat, but you wouldn't call me fit. I was had a big round face, still have a round face, but I
That's a
wasn't.
beautiful face, though.
That is true. It is the money maker. Uh, so I was, yeah, I wasn't the fittest guy in the world because I was going through some health stuff. But we got out of that, and I started working out. So I wanted to know how to firstly lose weight, and then cut off all the fat. So let's talk about cutting, man. How do you cut? What are the principles or the cornerstones of cutting?
So yeah, I know we touched a little bit on this last week or the week
Mhm.
before.
Yeah.
Um, so like that was kind of like what I had said originally was like the difference between cutting and bulking is very small. Not very small, but it's smaller than what you would think. Like there's less to it than there is otherwise thought. But outside of that, if you really want to dive into like let's say cutting
Yeah.
specifically, and like I think maybe why you would go about cutting. Obviously, if you're cutting, either you were larger previously, or you're like meaning like you bulked and now you're trying to cut, or you were just like overweight and you're trying to cut down that
Let's
fat
do
in some manner.
overweight, unfit guy trying to cut. You can do the bulk and then cut process later. But I want to know just a guy who's just gotten out of his couch and realized that look, he's got to do something. All right. Exactly right now, like people have got finished the lockdown. Some places, gyms have opened up, and people are not exactly in shape. They want to cut. They don't. Sometimes they don't have access to the gym anymore. They can just basically, concentrate on a diet. So what can one do right now to cut, get back
Okay,
in shape?
so
Size.
like obviously there's I guess three pillars, or not pillars, but three main aspects of I think any kind of bulk cut, whatever it is. You've got, or you should, what three main pillars should be, I guess, if especially if you're focusing on weightlifting, because there's a lot of different ways to lose weight, right? Or cut. I mean, if you just want to lose weight or fat, you could do that by running. You could do that by rowing. You could do that by biking. There's definitely a lot of ways to lose fat. But specifically within the world of, if we're talking about lifting weights and that kind of thing, there's the actual like workouts, lifting workouts that you're doing, like strength workouts or hypertrophy type workouts. Then there's the cardio or conditioning type stuff that you're doing. And then there's the nutrition aspect of it. And those three of that together kind of sets you up to for success, so to speak. Um, and manipulating those things are kind of what indicates whether or not you're going to be cutting or bulking in any given situation. So the first aspect, or the I guess or not the first aspect. I mean, they're all important, so you kind of have to approach them all at the same time. But like, I guess the first one I'll talk about is the nutrition side of things. If you are focused on cutting specifically, you're obviously going to want to be incorporating cleaner, leaner foods into your diet, meaning lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, preferably lots of if you with the type of carbohydrates that you're going to be eating, like generally carbs are going to be lower in this instance, but you're still going to want carbs because you need carbs for energy and you need carbs to support your workouts when it comes to the strength-based or hypertrophy-based stuff. So cutting out carbs completely is not a good idea, but definitely choosing your carbs more wisely and maybe selecting them, timing them in more appropriate times is going to be important. So what that could look like is, let's say, for example, that like you are okay. Well, before I get into that, let's talk about when it comes to that uh, how much of each things when you're looking at um, protein, carbs, fats, all that kind of thing. So obviously you need protein because protein is what builds the actual muscle after you are breaking it down and helps rebuild it and make it stronger and larger. You need carbs because that is your energy source for movement in these instances, whether it is that you're lifting weights or condition like doing cardio, whatever it is, you get that energy usually from carbohydrates. Then lastly, fats. Fats also give you energy, but on the other side, fats are also hugely important hormonally. If you aren't incorporating enough fats in your diet, specifically cholesterol, without cholesterol, your body does not produce or can't produce testosterone the same way. So if you're cutting out too much fat, you're actually doing yourself a disservice in the long run. But again, how much fat and where and when is important. So my big thing when it comes to I don't like to tell people what to. I mean, everybody likes to eat different things. Some people are
Yeah.
vegetarian, some people are not, and some people are vegan. Some people. So it's like when it comes to specific foods, like that's arbitrary. Like, but having said that, I think what the better approach is like when you look at your plate of food, like your plate for a meal, regardless of what your overall caloric intake is, and that'll depend upon like how big you are. Not how big you are. I'm sorry, your current size and where you're trying to get to in terms of losing weight. And I'll get into that in a second. But when you look at your plate, you want to look at your plate and see roughly a quarter to one third of that plate should be protein. Lean proteins, preferably, meaning if you eat meats, then like fish, chicken, lean fish, chicken, turkey's great. Um, Lean beef, cuts of pork, they're also good. If you lean more towards the vegan or vegetarian side of things, soy, specifically fermented soy, so like tempeh or the other fermented soy products versus other soy, just because hormonally soy kind of throws you off in terms of your estrogen to
Yeah,
testosterone
I heard
levels,
about that.
especially yeah, so especially for men, you want to be kind of careful about what kind of soy products you're eating on a regular basis if you are eating them, and even women too should be wary of that because it'll throw off. It can throw off, your estrogen levels, and therefore influence, issues with your period and other things like
Yeah.
that. So you be a little wary. But that's not to say that soy is bad outright. It's just manage it appropriately. But there's also beans are great, like
Yeah.
garbanzo beans. I love those. All beans have a good amount of protein.
Yeah.
Nuts are a great source of protein too, and great source of healthy fats. So there's a lot of different options you can, and then obviously there's protein powders. You can get milk based ones, or you can get vegetable based ones like pea protein, rice protein, pumpkin protein. There's so many different options nowadays that you can really, whatever your thing is, nutrition, diet wise, whatever category you fall into, you can use this approach without necessarily having to change your overall diet. I mean, like when I say change your diet, I mean like go from being vegetarian to like eating meat or vice versa or whatever. You don't need to do that. But like I said, so your plate should be roughly one quarter to one third protein, then a quarter to one third uh, uh, of some kind of starchy carbohydrate, um, and then about half to one third of some kind of preferably green vegetable. Um, and like the starchy carb could be, potatoes. It could be uh, bread if that's what you want. It could be um, uh,
Rice.
pasta. The rice. Rice is a great option. I always forget rice, even though I love rice. But yeah, rice as well. Um, so there's a lot of different cultures that actually have that as their main thing. Like I don't like. I mean, in Jamaican culture, like your meal is usually rice and beans with some form of like meat and then like cabbage. Like that's basically what I'm talking about. There's a lot of cultures that traditionally eat that way in general. So just take that approach, just and overall, and just try to like keep your meals kind of like that. And if you do that, you're going to, for the most part, be one, avoiding a lot of processed foods, especially you should be trying to avoid processed foods. They tend to have more chemicals that throw off your body. So you should be trying to avoid those, but you don't have to. It's up to you. But in either case, if you approach your meals like that, you tend to find that like overall, regardless of what you're choosing, you're going to be losing fat or losing weight. If you're all other things, if the other, two pillars are still held because, you're still predominantly taking in lean proteins, lots of green leafy vegetables, and a minimum amount or less amount of carbs, starchy carbs, just enough for the fuel, not enough to actually get stored as fat after the fact. Um, but that's overall. And then when it comes to actually looking at how many calories are you taking in, like for a day, like, there's 1,001 different calorie calculators out there based upon your body weight. So
Yeah.
what I would say is find one of them. They're all different. They all will vary slightly and have their reasonings why they do. Find whatever one works for you and just stick to that one. It might not be, it might not be perfect, but all it is like it gives you a base. So
Yeah.
you can know, like, okay, this is the base level. It tells me that based upon my current activity level, my current weight, this is how many calories I should be taking in for maintenance. And so if I want to lose, fat or lose weight in general, I need to obviously decrease those calories for maintenance level. So whatever maintenance level you find, whatever tool you use, drop it down by anywhere from 200 to 500 calories, I think, initially. See what happens for a week or two once you've done that. See if you're, losing weight at maybe a rate that you feel like, or maybe you're losing weight too fast, maybe you're losing weight too slow, or maybe it has no change, and so, but keep it for a week or two with that adjustment. After a week or two, see where you're at, and then adjust accordingly again. So if you've seen that after that week or two, you've noticed, okay, I've lost, some weight and I'm feeling good still, like I'm not feeling too tired. Okay, then I can keep this calorie deficit until it starts to plateau. And then once it plateaus, that means that you've dropped a certain amount of weight, you've plateaued. So you obviously need to readjust how many calories you're taking in because you're no longer the same weight. So you could drop it down another few hundred calories or you can go back through, do the whole calculator again with your new current weight and everything, and figure out the new maintenance level and drop it from there. The easiest thing really is to find that first one and then just, drop it by a few hundred calories every week or two, depending on what your situation is. But don't jump, like I would never say to go from, if it says your maintenance calories is 2,500 calories, don't go from that to 1,000 calories, overnight. That's it's going to shock your system, and you're not going to really be able to sustain it most likely, which is not to your benefit. You're better off dropping a few hundred calories.
Yeah, 2,500 calories is not easy to eat, honestly. I mean, I was trying to bulk and I was counting calories I was taking in, and I figured out that an average Indian meal with 4 chapatis is what we have, right? With a little bit of veggies and the pulses, dal, and even a bowl of yogurt with that. It's like 550 calories. So if you have 2 of those, that's 1,100. And then you got breakfast, which depends on how large your breakfast is. But even if you add that your breakfast is say 500 calories, that's just 1,600. So, I mean, I know 2,500. Most people, I think, have, depends on your size, of course, but most Indian people require about 2,100 as maintenance calories. So I'm trying to eat 3,000, and it's not easy.
Yeah, but you're also trying to eat 3,000 kind of in a healthy manner. Like there's a lot of people, if you really want to eat 3,000 calories, you can do it really easily. I mean, like there's this donuts that I found at the grocery store that I love. They're great, but I'll buy them, but I'll eat one. Whereas if I wanted to hit if I was like, oh, I just want to hit 3,000 calories, I'll eat all 6 of them easy.
Sure. Dude, I love Madeleines.
Or I'll go and get a Big Mac or something,
Exactly. So, I love Madeleines, dude. Those Madeleine cookies, the cakes, whatever you want to call them. I could eat like 10 of them for breakfast, and that'd be like 1,000 calories right there.
Exactly. Easy.
If you follow these strong men on YouTube, they eat like 8,000 calories in a day. Thor, the guy who played the Mountain, he does it in a healthy way. But if you see Brian Shaw, he's eating pizza, he's eating cheesecake. But I mean, look at the size of that guy.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like for them, like you gotta look at like they're eating for their goal. Their goal is not to look, a certain way. Their goal is to perform a certain way. And so having more mass is really the most important thing for them. And therefore, if they're not getting those calories, it doesn't they don't care if they look pretty or not or whatever. It's just about like I need to perform and I need the calories. I don't give a crap where it comes from.
Yeah.
Do it. So it's each, like I'm not against that. Like if I was doing those kind of competitions, I'd be eating sleeves of Oreos too. Like I got that. Like that's I get that completely. But if you're if you're actually looking to cut, then obviously you have to change that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And keep in those kind of overall, categories. So yeah, nutritionally, and then obviously, okay, so like that's the base, I guess the broad strokes of the nutrition. Deeper details are things like incorporating higher carb days and lower carb days. So like, for example, on the days where you work out, let's say like I work out, my strength workouts kind of thing are 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And on those days, I'll usually eat more carbohydrates after my workout to like replenish what I just, burned off. On
Yeah,
Tuesday, Thursdays, I usually eat less because I didn't work out or the same way, or I didn't work out at all. And on the weekend, same deal. Like I didn't work out the same way, or if at all. So I don't eat as many carbs on those days. So that's called carb cycling. So that kind of thing will allow you to keep your sanity while you're in a position where you're like lowering your number of calories per day and like keeping like relatively strict about things without necessarily without like losing efficiency, but losing the ability to work out regularly and with full effort. Because if you were to completely cut carbs all the time, cut them low all the time, not only like mentally would you feel off, but like physically you wouldn't be able to sustain that energy output the same way as you would otherwise. So carb cycling is important, or not important, but that's another element you can add in when it comes to trying to cut. Um, then there's also not just like carb cycling in the sense of which days you're eating, but when you're eating those carbohydrates. So again, if you're trying to limit the most amount of fat possible, or maximize the amount of fat loss, um, what's it called? Eating carbs after a workout versus on your off days is good. So like predominantly after workouts. So like if you, let's say like you work out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? You work out in the afternoon. So that would mean like keeping what you do in the daytime for the most part largely very low, not very low carb, but on the lower scale of the carb, and then having most of your carbs after the workout or around your workout in general. Like so within an hour before
an hour
to a
before.
few hours after is going to be ideal for that, because that's going to it's going to be the time period in which your body is most likely to store those extra calories as into your muscle versus into fat, which is what you want to do. Like obviously you're trying to you're trying to cut, so you want any extra calories or any extra nutrients to go towards building muscle or towards the energy of muscle. Um, yeah.